Rain slammed against the city like 1,000 angry fists. Water rushed along the cracked pavement, swallowing footprints and hope together. Mira ran through it, clutching a torn umbrella that barely shielded her from the storm. Her shoes squelched with every step, and the small paper bag of leftover bread pressed tightly against her chest was already damp. The streets were almost empty, except for an old man sitting alone beneath a flickering street lamp. His shoulders trembled beneath a soaked coat, his wrinkled hands cupped around a tin cup that held only rainwater. Mira stopped. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. She had one meal for the night, and even that wasn't enough. But as she watched the old man shiver, her heart overruled her hunger. She stepped closer. "Sir, you'll catch your death sitting here." The man lifted his head slowly. His face was pale, his beard gray with age and rain. His eyes, calm, searching, met hers. "I'm used to the cold," he murmured. Mira knelt beside him, pulling the bread from her bag. "Please," she said softly. "It's not much, but it's warm." She broke the loaf in half and placed it in his trembling hands. The smell of baked wheat and kindness rose through the air. He stared at it for a long moment, as if he'd forgotten what generosity felt like. "Child, you'll go hungry," she smiled faintly. "I've gone hungry before. You can repay me with a smile, sir." The man's lips curved weakly, but his eyes glimmered with something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Mira then removed her broken umbrella and held it above him. "Keep it," she insisted when he tried to return it. "The rain won't stop soon." "You'll get soaked," he warned. "I already am," she replied with a small laugh. "But at least you won't be." For a long second, they just looked at each other. The poor girl with nothing but compassion, and the old man who saw more than she knew. Then Mira stood, pulling her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, and turned to go. The man called after her. "At least tell me your name." "Mira," she answered without looking back. "It means peace." She disappeared into the curtain of rain, leaving behind a silence that felt sacred. The old man remained under the street lamp, the umbrella trembling slightly in his grip. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and drew out a gold-engraved watch. When he flipped it open, the faint glow of the streetlight revealed a photograph inside. A young man in a tailored suit, proud eyes, and the unmistakable air of wealth. The old man's voice broke the night. "Maybe. She's the one." The rain swallowed his words, but his gaze followed the direction where Mira had gone, toward the unknown, where fate had already begun to stir. Golden sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Reynard mansion, setting the marble floors aglow. Servants moved quietly, their whispers echoing through the vast halls. Something was different about the master of the house. Mr. Reynard sat alone in the grand dining room, untouched breakfast before him. The usually commanding man now looked deep in thought, eyes distant as if trapped in yesterday's rain. "Sir?" His butler, Graham, cleared his throat gently. "You haven't eaten." "Shall I?" Mr. Reynard lifted a hand. "Tell me, Graham, have you ever met someone so poor they remind you that goodness still exists?" The butler blinked, unsure how to answer. "I can't say I have, sir." Reynard's voice softened. "I met her last night. A girl with nothing. Yet she gave me everything she had. No hesitation, no pride, just kindness." He leaned back, the faintest smile touching his face. "For years I've searched for a woman who values hearts, not fortunes. Maybe I found her." The butler hesitated. "You mean for young Master Ethan?" At the name, Reynard's smile faded. Upstairs, footsteps echoed, sharp, confident, and impatient. Ethan Reynard entered the room, his tailored suit gleaming, phone pressed to his ear. His words cut like glass. "Sell it. If they can't afford our rate, they don't deserve our time." He ended the call, glancing at his father with polite indifference. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes," Reynard said, studying his son. Ethan, you have wealth, power, but none of it will keep you warm when you're old and alone. I want you to marry someone who knows the value of love, not luxury." Ethan chuckled under his breath. "Father, please, you've been reading fairy tales again. A poor angel who'll fix my cold heart?" His smirk widened. "Do they even exist outside your imagination?" Reynard's tone hardened. "I've met her." Ethan froze, then laughed outright. "You've met her? And who is this saint? Some girl who smiled at you in the market?" "Mock me if you wish," his father said, voice low but steady. "But for the first time in years, I saw honesty in someone's eyes. She gave me bread when she had none for herself." Ethan's laughter died. "Father, you gave away half the company to charity last year. Don't tell me you're planning to give away your heart now." He straightened his cufflinks, dismissive. "Enjoy your fantasy. I have a meeting." As his son's footsteps faded, Mr. Reynard exhaled deeply, disappointment etching deeper lines into his face. "You'll understand one day, my boy," he whispered. Graham stepped forward cautiously. "Shall I forget this ever happened, sir?" Reynard's eyes glimmered with quiet resolve. "No, find her, the girl from the storm. I want to know everything about her. Where she lives, who she is, how she survives." The butler hesitated. "You wish to test her?" "Yes," Reynard said, gazing out at the sprawling city. "If her heart is truly pure, fate will reveal it." Outside, sunlight gleamed off the towers, cold, glittering, and heartless, while somewhere beneath them, a poor girl walked unknowingly toward destiny. The first light of dawn slipped through the cracked window of Mira's small room, painting faint gold over peeling walls. Her alarm never rang. She couldn't afford one, but habit woke her before the sun. She tied her faded scarf, packed her apron, and stepped into the still sleepy street. She didn't know that. A few blocks away, a man in a gray coat sat in a parked car, camera resting on his knee. Mr. Donovan, private investigator, watched her quietly through the drizzle. "Target up," he murmured into a recorder. Heading to the cafe, alone, no companions, no luxury items. At the cafe, Mira moved with gentle precision. She greeted each customer by name, gave extra sugar to those who looked tired, and slipped leftover muffins into a paper bag for the homeless. When her shift ended, she didn't rest. She crossed the street to help an elderly woman carry groceries up the stairs. Donovan followed from a distance, notebook filling quickly. Feeds stray dogs, helps children with homework in the alley school, refuses tips from strangers. His brow furrowed. "Not an act," he whispered. "She's genuine." By evening, Mira finally sat down on a bench, exhaustion clinging to her like dust. She took out a small notebook, its pages filled with quotes about kindness and hope. The investigator paused his camera, staring at her through the lens. Something in her quiet dignity unsettled him. Later that night, Donovan stood before Mr. Reynard in the grand study. The old man listened in silence, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "She's not after money, sir," Donovan said finally. "She gives away more than she earns. Lives in a rented attic. Works without complaint. People adore her. No scandals. No secrets." Reynard's eyes softened. "And her spirit?" "Unbreakable," Donovan replied. "I'd stake my reputation on that." The old man leaned back, smiling faintly. "Then we'll bring her here." "For what reason, sir?" Reynard thought for a moment, then said, "Tell her there's a job. Something humble. Temporary caretaker for the garden, perhaps. If she accepts, destiny will take care of the rest." Donovan nodded, though he couldn't hide his curiosity. "You really believe she's the one for your son?" "I believe," Reynard said quietly, "that sometimes heaven hides grace in the poorest hands." The next afternoon, as Mira wiped the cafe counter, a stranger entered. He handed her a clean white envelope sealed with a gold crest. "For you," he said simply, and left before she could ask a question. Her heart pounded. Inside, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Temporary caretaker position." Room and meals provided. Immediate start. Address enclosed. Mira stared at it, torn between disbelief and fear. A mansion job? Out of nowhere? It sounded too good to be true, or too dangerous to ignore. Rain began to fall again outside, tapping softly against the window. She clutched the letter to her chest, whispering, "Maybe this is the chance I've been praying for." Still, a shadow of doubt crossed her face, because deep down, she knew every miracle has its price. The iron gates loomed like giants before her, glinting under the pale morning light. Mira's hands trembled as she clutched her small cloth bag. Beyond the gates, a mansion rose from the mist. Tall marble pillars, sweeping balconies, glass that shimmered like water. It didn't look like a home, it looked like another world. She pressed the call button, her voice barely steady. I'm here for the caretaker position." The gate creaked open, slow and heavy, as if judging who dared to enter. A driver escorted her up the winding path. Every step echoed louder than her heartbeat. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and old secrets. Paintings of proud ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following her as she walked. When the parlor doors opened, she saw him, Mr. Reynard, sitting by a roaring fire. His eyes warmed instantly, but his tone remained formal. "Ah, Miss Mira," he said, as if meeting her for the first time. "Welcome. I trust your journey wasn't too long." Mira smiled nervously. "It was fine, sir. I've never been in a house like this." "Then it's time you make yourself at home," he said kindly. "I need help tending the garden and reading to me in the evenings. My eyes aren't what they used to be." Relief washed over her. "I'll do my best, sir. I'm grateful for the chance." Mr. Reynard studied her for a long moment, her plain dress, her hands rough from work, and saw again the same quiet light that had pierced his heart in the rain. A servant entered hurriedly. "Sir, Master Ethan has arrived early from his business trip." The warmth in the room shifted. Moments later, Ethan Reynard strode in. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, sharp words waiting on his tongue. He stopped cold when he saw Mira standing near his father. "Who is this?" he demanded. Mr. Reynard's smile didn't waver. "Our new caretaker." Ethan's gaze raked over her from head to toe, his tone laced with mockery. "A caretaker? Or another one of your charity projects, father?" Mira straightened slightly. "I'm here to work, sir," she said quietly. He smirked. "Work? With those hands? And that accent?" The sting burned, but Mira refused to flinch. "A person's worth," she said softly, "isn't in what they wear or how they speak." For a brief second, Ethan's smirk faltered, then hardened again. He turned to his father. "I hope you don't expect me to tolerate this." "Intrusion." Mr. Reynard only smiled. "You may find, Ethan, that some intrusions bring blessings." Ethan scoffed and walked away, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the marble hall. Mira lowered her eyes, unsure if she had just ruined her only chance. That night, the mansion grew still. Mr. Reynard stood on the balcony, gazing down at the two figures below, his proud son and the humble girl, passing each other in silence. A knowing smile touched his lips as he whispered to the night, "Let's see which heart changes first." Ethan Reynard had made up his mind. He would drive the new girl out before she got too comfortable. From the moment Mira entered the mansion each morning, his voice followed her like a shadow. "You missed a spot. The flowers are uneven. My coffee's cold." He watched her reactions closely, waiting for anger, for frustration, anything that would prove she was just another pretender trying to please his father. But she only smiled softly and said, "I'll fix it, sir." One afternoon, he sat at the breakfast table, sipping his espresso. As Mira approached with a tray, he tilted the cup deliberately, letting the dark liquid spill across the tablecloth. "Clumsy," he muttered, pretending it was her fault. Mira froze, the hot coffee dripping onto her hand. For a heartbeat, Ethan saw something flash in her eyes. Not fear, not resentment, but quiet strength. She simply took a cloth and wiped the table clean. "No harm done," she said gently. Her calm unsettled him. That night, unable to sleep, he wandered through the corridor and stopped outside the small room Mr. Reynard had given her. Through the half-open door, he saw her kneeling beside her bed, hands clasped in prayer. "Please, Lord," she whispered, "help the rude man find peace. He must be hurting inside." The words hit Ethan like a blade wrapped in kindness. "She prays for me? After everything I've done?" He stepped back, heart thudding. For the first time in years, guilt crept in where pride used to live. From his study upstairs, Mr. Reynard watched it all on the security feed, a quiet smile on his face. "Ah, my boy," he murmured. "You're finally meeting someone wealth can't buy." Over the next few days, Ethan found himself hesitating before speaking sharply. When Mira greeted him, he answered, though still with sarcasm. "Careful, caretaker," he'd say. "You're making me look bad," she'd laugh softly. "Then you'll have to work harder to look good, sir." There was warmth in her teasing, something unfamiliar, disarming. For a man surrounded by power, it was her humility that made him feel small. But peace never lasts long in the Reynard mansion. One evening, the air grew heavy with the scent of rain. Mr. Reynard sat in the drawing room, smiling as he watched his son and Mira exchange small, awkward words. His laughter was low, content. Then his hand suddenly froze mid-air, the smile vanishing from his face. "Father?" Ethan's voice sharpened. "Father!" The old man's teacup fell, shattering on the marble. He clutched his chest, gasping. Mira ran forward instantly, catching him before he hit the ground. "Call an ambulance!" she shouted, her hands trembling as she held him. Ethan fumbled with his phone, panic shattering his usual calm. "Dad, stay with me!" Mr. Reynard's eyes fluttered weakly toward Mira. "Don't—" "Leave him," he whispered before his body went still. The sirens were still miles away when the lights in the mansion flickered, and the world seemed to stop. Rain poured again, as if the heavens were weeping with them. Sirens screamed through the night while the ambulance tore down the slick roads. Mira held Mr. Reynard's cold hand, whispering prayers under her breath. Beside her, Ethan sat stiff, eyes fixed forward, jaw clenched. Pride had always been his armor, but now it felt more like a chain choking him. When they reached the hospital, doctors rushed Mr. Reynard inside. Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the doors that swallowed his father. His chest felt heavy, like guilt pressing down on every breath. Mira turned to him, soaked, trembling but steady. "He'll be all right," she said softly. Ethan's voice cracked. "You don't know that." "I believe it," she replied. "Sometimes faith does what fear can't." Her calmness disarmed him. For the first time, Ethan didn't see a poor worker or a stranger. He saw someone who refused to give up hope, even when the world was falling apart. Hours passed. The rain outside softened into a drizzle. Mira returned from the nurse's station with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him. "You should drink something warm." He accepted it without meeting her eyes. "You're not leaving?" Mira shook her head. "Not while he's fighting." Something inside Ethan broke quietly. "I used to think caring made people weak," he said, staring at the untouched coffee. "After my mother died, everyone wanted something, from our name, our money, our grief. I stopped trusting, even my father. He never stopped pretending everything was fine." Mira listened, her gaze soft but unwavering. Sometimes people pretend because they're afraid to lose the little strength they have left. He looked at her, surprised. "You talk like you've seen a lot of pain." She smiled faintly. "I've seen enough to know pain can make you bitter. Or better. We get to choose." For a long while, neither spoke. The hospital's lights hummed quietly, and Ethan realized his heartbeat had slowed for the first time in hours. Then the doctor appeared at the doorway, removing his mask. He's stable, he said. Relief washed over them both. Ethan exhaled shakily, gripping the chair. Thank God. But the doctor's next words caught him off guard. He's awake, and he's asked to see someone. Ethan rose instantly. Me, right? I'm his son. The doctor hesitated. Actually, he asked to see Miss Mira. Alone. Ethan blinked, as if the words didn't make sense. What? Why her? Mira froze, startled. Me? Yes, the doctor said, glancing between them. He was very specific. Ethan stepped back, confusion and something darker flickering in his eyes. He barely knows you, he murmured. Why would he? Mira looked toward the hospital room door, heart pounding. Beyond it, Mr. Reynard lay pale under the white lights, waiting for her. And as she walked toward the door, Ethan's world tilted, the faint echo of his father's words replaying in his mind. Maybe. She's the one. The steady beep of machines filled the hospital room as Mira stepped inside. Mr. Reynard lay propped against the pillows, his breathing shallow, but his eyes alive with a strange calm. Mira, his voice was faint but certain. Come closer. She moved to his bedside, her hands clasped nervously. You shouldn't be talking, sir. You need rest, he gave a weak smile. There's something I must tell you before it's too late. She frowned. What do you mean? Mr. Reynard's trembling hand reached out and covered hers. The night we met in the rain, I wasn't just an old man lost in the storm. I am Reynard, Ethan Reynard's father. The words struck her like thunder. Ethan's father? Yes, he whispered. I wanted to find a woman who values goodness over gold. When you gave me your umbrella, you showed me more heart than all the people I've met in my wealthy circles. I needed to be sure. So I tested you. Mira stepped back, disbelief twisting into hurt. You tested me? I had to know who you truly were. I never meant to hurt you. But the words only deepened the wound. Memories flashed through her mind. Every kind gesture, every moment she'd thought was real. All this time, you were watching me like a project? Tears stung her eyes. Even my job at your mansion. It wasn't real, was it? Mr. Reynard's silence was answer enough. Her heart broke. I thought kindness meant something to you. But I was just a test subject for the rich. Mira, please. But she was already shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. You played with a poor girl's dignity. You call it a test. I call it cruelty. She turned and ran from the room before he could speak again. Outside, Ethan caught sight of her through the hallway glass. Mira, what happened? She didn't stop. Ask your father. He hurried after her, but by the time he reached the exit, she was gone. Vanished into the rain like the night they met. The echo of the hospital doors closing behind her felt like a final goodbye. Ethan stood there, drenched, the truth hitting him hard. His father hadn't just tested Mira, he'd tested him, too. And he'd failed. Back inside, Mr. Reynard lay silently, guilt shadowing his frail face. Maybe, he murmured to the empty room, I broke the very heart I hoped to heal. Days blurred into weeks. The mansion grew quiet, its hallways cold without Mira's laughter. Ethan stopped attending meetings, stopped answering calls. He sat alone by the window each night, replaying her words. You played with a poor girl's dignity. Then, one morning, the world awoke to a shocking headline splashed across every screen. Billionaire's son rejects all business deals. Missing from public eye. Somewhere beyond the city lights, a torn umbrella swayed gently in the wind. Rain fell softly over the city once more. Gentle, cleansing, like the world was starting over. Inside a quiet library at the edge of town, Mira stacked worn-out books on a wooden shelf. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was far away, trapped in the echoes of a past she couldn't forget. The patter of raindrops against the window pulled her from her thoughts. She looked up and froze. Across the street, in the gray mist, stood a man, tall, still holding an umbrella. Her heart skipped. The silhouette was achingly familiar. She stepped closer to the window, breath fogging the glass. The man looked up. It was Ethan. He crossed the street slowly, letting the rain hit his face before stepping inside the library. His clothes were soaked, but his eyes carried a calm Mira had never seen before. Humble, sincere, almost vulnerable. "Mira," he said quietly, voice trembling, "I didn't come to make excuses. I came to thank you." She stared at him, unsure what to feel. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I couldn't stay silent anymore. My father recovered, and he told me everything. He regrets how he hurt you." She turned away, blinking back tears. "That doesn't erase what happened." He nodded. "It shouldn't. I walked away from everything. The business, the deals, the noise. None of it mattered after you. I started a charity, in your name, the Mira Foundation. It feeds families who can't afford bread." Her breath caught. "Why would you do that?" Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Because you showed me what wealth really means. You gave everything when you had nothing. You taught me that kindness is the only thing that grows when shared." Tears welled in Mira's eyes, her heart fighting between pain and hope. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan." "I know," he whispered. "That's why it's real." For a long moment, only the rain spoke between them. Then Mira reached out, hesitating, before finally taking his hand. Warmth spread between their palms, fragile but true. A soft smile curved her lips. "You've changed." He smiled back. "You did that." Weeks later, the mansion's iron gates opened again. Not to servants or investors, but to children laughing under umbrellas. Mira and Ethan walked through them side by side, carrying baskets of food. Inside, Mr. Reynard waited by the window, his eyes glistening with pride. "You came back," he whispered. Mira smiled. "We came home." As laughter filled the once lonely halls, the rain outside turned to sunlight, painting the world gold. True riches are not found in gold or fame, but in hearts that give without expecting anything in return. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can rewrite the destiny of even the coldest soul. If you believe kindness can change destinies, share this story, and let someone remember the power of a giving heart.